to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. Many times we think about controlling weeds early in the season, but if you've got weeds that are going to make harvest difficult, you may be considering a pre-harvest burn down. We'll talk about desiccation and pre-harvest burn down on today's show.
Well, it's August now, and you may be thinking, well, there's nothing much yet I can do to increase yield of my crops, but that's not true in the case of soybeans. In much of the country, there are some things you can still do to bump your yields and your profits. We'll talk about those today.
Well, one of the things that always helps with yield is controlling our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed, but first, here's today's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about one of the things that's really helped us on our farm to kind of understand our soils and our crop roots a little bit better. It's root pits.
Well, it's always neat to look above ground and see what's going on and judge your crop that way, but really the story is happening below the surface of the soil. And if you haven't dug a root pit on your farm yet, I would strongly suggest doing so this year and seeing what you can learn by looking at the below ground portion of the plant. When we think about that, normally we've got about half the plant mass above the ground and about half the plant mass below. So if we're just looking at, well, here's what the above ground part of the plant is telling me, it's maybe half the story at best. When we have a good, successful root system, we end up with a much healthier plant overall. So the below ground portion, in my opinion, is even more important. But how do you really know what's going on there unless you start seeing some lodging in your crop and you say, well, the roots must not be good? Do some digging this year on your farm. You'll learn a lot.
So I don't care if we're talking about big crop acres or we're talking about a big garden. Either way, it's nice to dig a root pit that's going down, say, 4 to even 5 feet deep in the ground. What we do in our own operation is use a skid steer loader and just pull in, back out. And the other thing is, we'll actually go into the field just a little bit. And I remember the first time we did this probably 15 years ago, and our dad was going crazy that, oh my goodness, you're tearing up crop and everything to go out into the field a little bit and dig this root pit. And I'm like, Dad, how much is an ear of corn worth? How much is one corn plant worth? At the time, it was worth a penny. So what if I tore up 500 plants? I said, here's $5, now we're even. Okay, it's no big deal to tear up a few plants, but the point is we want to get into the field just a little bit, get past the end rows, dig in, down in the ground, and then really see what's going on.
Well, and the big thing too is just like when you're digging up a plant, if you pull it out of the ground, you're going to rip a lot of the root system off. When we're doing this dig, yeah, we're going to dig down 4 or 5 feet, but then we're going to carefully scrape back along the edges so we can really see what's going on. And some people will even take it to the degree of getting a pressure washer out and washing down the side of the root pit so they can see all the fine little root hairs. I don't care what degree you take this. I've got a feeling as soon as you dig in a little bit, you're going to be interested in seeing a little bit more. Now, a couple of things that you may take notice of too. Many times we'll dig straight in and maybe our pit is 5 feet wide and you'll see a few rows of crop. Every 30 inches you'll see a plant. Some people like to go along the side of the row. So like in corn, for example, let's say you have a corn plant every 6 inches. So you'd have roots every 6 inches you could be taking a look at along the side of that row. That might be interesting for you too. You know, if you have things like sidewall compaction because conditions were too wet at planting time, those things will show up when you get a root pit, or if you have some rootworm feeding, or if you just have a fantastic year and everything was great. All those things will become very evident to you very quickly.
One of the most telling things for us, one of the very first root pits we ever dug, was we had corn that was suffering from not enough moisture. The corn leaves were kind of rolled up and everything, so we dig this root pit, and literally I go back out there the next morning and the root pit's 5 feet deep and there's water standing at the bottom of the pit. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but even I can figure out, hey, all my roots in that case were in the top 6 inches. I had a hard compaction layer. I didn't have roots below that, and we got down 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep, and everything below, and there was all kinds of moisture. So if we could simply connect the two things together, we'd have phenomenal crop, and that's what we've tried to do ever since then, because we saw visually, hey, in the root pit, there's all kinds of water, and we don't have roots getting there.
I was talking to a farmer one time about this root pit idea, and he said, you know, I see this like I see a doctor's appointment. I'm pretty nervous about what I might find, and that makes me not want to do it, because what if there's a problem? I'm going to have to fix it. But you really have to think about it this way of, hey, if there is a problem, I want to know about it so I can change that for my farm. Because the story that Brian relates about us seeing this compaction layer and water at the bottom of the pit, that's 15 years ago. So we've made changes on our farm right away after seeing that, and we've been benefiting from them for the last 15 years. So it's something, once you see what's going on below ground, you can change your management practices above ground to accommodate the needs that the roots have, and you're going to benefit every year the rest of your farming career from what you're going to learn from this root pit.
One of the things we always do too is just take a knife and run it up the side of that root pit just to find out where our compaction layers are. We're often finding two different compaction layers, one that's man-made at say 6 inches or maybe 10 inches deep, and then another that's natural at 15 inches or 20 inches, something like that. And ideally, how we fix a lot of that is we go out with a straight shank machine to go just below the man-made compaction layer and the natural compaction layer. We want to get below both of them ideally so we can start connecting our top to the bottom and have those plants get their roots all the way down. So we just make some slices out in the soil with something like a Brilliant Zone Commander, and there are other machines like that too. We're not real big on C shanks. We like straight shanks and narrow points, and then we can go deeper and get more of that accomplished.
Well, the easy answer some people say is, I just want to go out and rip that ground up. But as you do that, all you're doing is basically lowering your compaction layer. So if you've got a hard pan, say at 8 inches, and you go just rip everything up, what happens is, think about if you have different soil particles out there, the fine particles are going to keep settling down, and they're going to make a thick layer again that's going to be tough for your roots to penetrate. And we end up moving that compaction layer down to the depth of that deep ripping that you're doing.
Well, once again, we just think that digging a root pit will be very beneficial for you, because as farmers, we're visual people. Once we see it, we go, oh, okay, that's what's going on out in the field. Dig the root pit. It will help you out a lot in your operation.
And one other thing that can help you out greatly is controlling our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
Regalia RX biofungicide activates a plant's natural defense system, limiting the effects of disease and improving overall plant health. Regalia RX complements your fungicide program to optimize yield and strengthen return on investment. Ask your retailer for Regalia RX today.
Could I boost my potential by foliar feeding?
You can. Foliar feeding can correct nutrient deficiencies and sustain your crop through stress. It's a great way to deliver nutrients that your crop lacks to reach its full potential. Research proves it. Applied alone or in combination with your crop protection program, AgroLiquid products assure that when the season presents opportunity, you can boost your crop's yield potential by foliar feeding. For more info, visit agroliquid.com.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Looking to maximize yield? QuickRoots from Monsanto Bioag is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. QuickRoots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more, and is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Get QuickRoots today.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandaco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving and rocks and has contour conformity equaling zero downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
Your time is valuable. That's why you need a Hagie STS application system. Hagie STS products are designed for precision and efficiency, allowing you to make applications all season long with just one machine. Contact your Hagie rep today.
Each year we we get a lot of questions about pre-harvest burn downs and desiccation. And let me just first start by saying, when at all possible, we don't want to do these applications because they cost money, and you know what, our yield's basically already made. But certainly there are some situations when you may need to do it. We're going to talk about those today. Before we get to those though, let me just say this. Anytime you're doing a pre-harvest burn down, it's likely to hurt the germination of that seed. So when it's for seed production, we don't want to do pre-harvest burn downs or desiccations. We want to avoid those just so we don't have any worry about germination.
You know what's interesting when you make that comment, Brian? There was some seed being produced last winter in South America. And they're having a really rainy spell about the time the seed needed to be harvested, and they're starting to panic. Wow, we need to get the seed out of here, and everything is so wet, the plants are not dying down. So they decided we're gonna have to do a pre-harvest burn down. Even though it's seed production, they thought that's gonna be our only chance to get the stuff out of the field before we catch more rain. So they did a pre-harvest burn down on some Liberty Link seed with Roundup, but they did it so close to harvest, then all of a sudden the sun came out, everything was good, and they just mowed right through it. They didn't have enough time for that pre-harvest interval. When we're thinking about a pre-harvest burn down, we do have to keep in mind there is a pre-harvest window, and the reason why is because there could still be some residue in that seed. The problem is that seed came up to North America, got planted this spring, and there were a few fields across the whole country, just a few, no big deal. It was one seed lot that had some residue of Roundup in that seed, and the plants suffered from that early in the spring. So we do want to be cautious of that. We're going to talk about a number of different options that you may have, but do adhere to those pre-harvest intervals. They're there for an important reason.
Okay, so when we talk about the main reasons why you might want a desiccation or pre-harvest burn down, Darren just got to one, and that's, hey, I want to get my harvest done at a certain time. So especially when we go to the southern United States or even the coast, we see a lot more of this type of thing happening. In the Midwest, we don't see a lot of desiccation being done on corn or soybeans or wheat, but on some of the specialty crops, we very well might. When we talk about options there in terms of which products you can use, we really like Gramoxone, but there are other products available, like Darren mentioned Roundup. There's also Sharpen, Valor, and a number of different products. You just have to check the label for your particular crop because there are all these products and not all of them are labeled on every crop.
Well, you have to also think about, all right, I need to do this desiccation, but if there's a few weeds out there, I would really like to control those weeds as well, and that'll make harvest go a lot easier. The challenge right now is a lot of those weeds may be the Roundup resistant weeds. We're hearing a lot of calls from around the country. Hey, I've got some mare's tail out there. I've got some pigweed out there. I have some ragweed that I wasn't able to kill in crop. I would like to clean those out without the combine having to chug through all those green plants and trying to mow them off. But if those weeds are out there, spraying Roundup for your desiccation alone isn't going to do anything for those weeds. So you may be looking at some of the other options that you could use that could clean up the weeds. And you know, chances are those weeds are great big, and getting coverage down to the bottom of those weeds with a contact killer is going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, and the other thing about that is there are certain rates that are labeled as well. So you might not be able to go to the maximum rate that you could in a general burn down situation pre-plant. And if we're talking about lower rates with this desiccation application, you know, you just kind of have to hope for the best. But the biggest piece of advice we have for you there is pick the right day. Gramoxone, for example. It works better when you get a nice, sunny, warm day, and if you can get great spray coverage. So don't be trying your pre-harvest burn downs with something like Gramoxone or Sharpen or Valor where we need contact. Don't try those with 8 gallons of water or 5 gallons of water. Use 15 gallons of water and good spray pressure. Really get that great coverage. Because remember, everything's big at that point, and these products are contact killers. It's different than Roundup or Banville or 2,4-D. With a lot of these desiccation products, we've got to have that great spray coverage.
The other thing is you're going to have to pick the right spray day where you don't have a big wind or something like that, because you're going to need to go with flat fan nozzles to get this great coverage. Keep in mind, flat fan nozzles are going to create a smaller droplet, so it can potentially move with wind. So if we're spraying something that's prone to some wind movement, we want to be real careful with that with the flat fan nozzles. The next thing with those nozzles is you want to maintain the proper height above the crop. With most flat fans, you're going to want a spray pattern starting about 20 inches above the crop. You don't need to be 5 feet above the crop, but you do need to be at least 20 inches as you're going across the field. So if you're going through some uneven terrain and that boom is going to be bouncing, you're certainly going to have to be a little higher than 20 inches to make sure you're always at least 20 inches. That way you have a nice spray pattern.
One other thing I'd mention is spray adjuvants. A lot of times we don't think too much about the adjuvant, but it is incredibly important with many of these desiccation and pre-harvest burn down products. Usually methylated seed oil is our best recommendation, but crop oil concentrate also works pretty well, especially when we talk about Gramoxone, Sharp, and Valor. They all require the use of those products. Even if you're mixing something else in there that doesn't need it, just remember, anytime you get Gramoxone, Sharp, and Valor, and many of the other desiccation products, use methylated seed oil or crop oil.
You've got to get that thing done right around September 1st. You want to have that product on hand and be ready to go when the day comes.
Well, once again, pre-harvest burn downs and desiccations can fit in some situations. We don't want to do it unless we have to, but in some cases there are definitely reasons why you might want to spray.
Well, one thing you may be spraying for is our weed of the week. Have you identified this week's weed?
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a Soil Max Gold Digger tile plow. Soil Max tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with Ag Leader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a Soil Max Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with Soil Max. Visit soilmax.com.
It's a humble idea. Use a biological process to turn a plant into a power source. From that idea came the first Poet Refinery. One biorefinery in one town turned into 27 facilities in 27 towns, creating new local jobs, producing hundreds of millions of gallons of ethanol, and providing renewable products around the world. Suddenly, that one little idea seems a whole lot bigger. See the world differently with Poet.
Being a farmer means securing your land and livelihood for the future. Harvest Solutions from Capello USA have the grit to get you there. Our product lines for corn, sunflowers, and forage are designed for efficiency and longevity, preventing harvest loss while minimizing maintenance and downtime. To do everything you can to advance your farmland to the next generation, call us at 855-CAPELLO or visit us at capellousa.com. Capello USA, Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave pea. Most of your applied pea gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more pea available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing pea availability can lead to increased pea uptake in the plant. That's more pea, and more pea. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your pea with Avail.
What if instead of running test plots on 10 acres, you could test on 10,000? With Farmers Business Network, the world becomes your plot trial. FBN is the independent farmer-to-farmer agronomic network. FBN connects real data from tens of thousands of fields and provides you trusted analysis on hundreds of seeds, practices, and field performance to maximize your profits. Find out how your field seeds and practices compare today by joining the FBN community at farmersbusinessnetwork.com. Just $500 per year for unlimited acres.
Late in the season in soybeans, what are you going to do to increase yield and profits?
Well, you think about this. Okay, you put a herbicide down, you come back in crop, you spray for bugs, you spray for weeds, maybe even you spray a fungicide out there and you think, hey, I've done my job. No. We're just getting started. Soybeans are flowering. They're going to continue flowering for a considerable amount of time. Typically, we're going to see flowering happening out in the field for a couple of months. Well, that's a big time window where, hey, there's new blossoms coming. We still need to protect that plant. We can still influence it with nutrient applications or other things. You know, don't give up on your beans. It's never too late for beans to recover and make good yield.
Well, never's kind of pushing it, but I will say this.
Well, eventually the beans senesce and mature, right. Absolutely. But until that point, we still have things we can do.
Exactly. And one of the things our dad always used to say, and the old saying from farmers in our region of the country was, August rains make beans. Okay, it's early August. There's still a lot of yield potential sitting there on the table. Are we going to take it or not? And yes, you're definitely going to be helped if you have some August rains. But even if you don't have a lot of August rains, you got to be looking at diseases, possibly even weeds, definitely looking at insects, and even thinking a little bit about fertility. This is right at a critical stage. A lot of people are doing tissue analysis. We certainly are on our farm at this time of year to see how are we sitting on phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, some of the micronutrients, maybe a little foliar feeding might be worth a shot. Lots of things to consider.
Recently, I was talking to a farmer who, this is his first year pulling plant tissue analysis on his farm. So he started off in May and June, and he pulled samples in corn and in soybeans. And he said, you know, in the corn, I was seeing some things where I was short in this or short in that. But in my soybeans, everything looked good. So I quit pulling samples in the beans and just focused all my effort in the corn. And so often we see the soybeans looking good, at least as far as nutrient levels in the plant, until we hit flowering, until we start putting pods on, until we start filling those pods. Now is the time you have to be watching the soybean fields to see, all right, what am I running short on? What can I do differently in my fertility program, whether it's a foliar feed now or something that we focus on this fall or next spring for the next crop. But keep an eye on those bean fields. There's a lot of things showing up.
All right, so just real quick, when I look at weed control late in the season, there aren't a lot of options yet. You might still be able to be on label with Roundup this late in the game. Otherwise, quite frankly, it's going out walking some fields if you have to do that. When I talk about fungicide, hey, late in the season, yeah, we can not only increase yield a little bit, but also improve seed quality. So especially for seed growers, they should be looking at foliar applications of fungicide right now. When it comes to insecticide, you know what? Insecticide's dirt cheap. It's $2 an acre for the full rate. So if you have only a few bugs out there, you might be able to justify treatment. So the reason why we're talking about all this is just to hopefully motivate you to go out and do some scouting on your farm. Look for weeds, for insects, for diseases, for opportunities to maybe hit a field or two with some foliar fertilizer. Do some things, try some things out on your farm. There's still a chance to bump your yield and your profits. Well, one of the things you may be scouting for is our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to control it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Is ivy leaf morning glory. This is just an annual weed, but it's one of the toughest ones that's out there. And I think about this a lot the same as wild buckwheat. These are kind of viney weeds, and some of the products that we think are outstanding on just about everything are not necessarily the best on ivy leaf morning glory. For example, the HPPDs that we'll use quite commonly in corn.
Well, even Roundup, you look at products that are weak on that. Many times we say, well, I have pigweed out in my field, or I have lamb's quarter out in my field, and we look at those as the driver weeds. We go out, we clean them up with those HPPDs or with some Roundup, if Roundup's still working on the pigweed in your area. And then we say, well, man, I missed this weed like wild buckwheat, or missed this weed like ivy leaf morning glory. And those viney type weeds can be a little tricky to control. The big thing that I look at with any weed that vines out, we want to try and control that thing early. If we can do it pre-emerge before it's even up, that's the best, or with a very early season treatment so we can get it when it just has 1 or 2 growing points. Because once a weed like ivy leaf morning glory starts vining out and climbing up on plants or circling itself around plants, it's really tough to get coverage on that weed, let alone pick the right herbicide to control it.
Okay, in corn, our suggestion is start with Sure Start, Triple Flex, even Verdict is pretty good, and then post-emerge, make sure you're using Status or one of the dicamba products. In soybeans, we really like Authority MTZ down. We're going to follow with something containing Pursuit post-emerge. That combination will generally get it for you. And then in wheat, we'd say Sharpen pre, and then follow up with Wide Match and Addition Broad Spec post.
That's all the time we have for this week's weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
wheat harvest went pretty well, but the residue left in your field wasn't spread perfectly. We'll talk about how to fix that and the implications if you don't during today's Iron Talk. Everyone is always excited to get the wheat crop off the instant it's ready to harvest. We fall into that category as well. However, if you don't get your residue spread evenly, you're setting yourself up for problems with your next crop. Even if the residue is just a little thicker in spots, it leads to the ground not warming up as fast and the emergence of your crop being slowed or even stopped. Act now to move that residue around and eliminate problems going forward. Some tillage, hopefully just light tillage, may be required. A heavy harrow has become a popular choice in the Dakotas, but anything like a light field finisher could be a good option. The trick is to do as little soil disturbance as possible, since these fields will be sitting with no crop for a while. Personally, I'd like to get some cover crop out there immediately to protect your soils from erosion too. No matter what crop you're harvesting, make sure the residue spreads evenly, otherwise you're going to need to do some light tillage to clean it up. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
Working in agriculture over the past 3 decades, I saw a need for an accurate way to apply dry product to seed. That's where our Changing Times applicators come in. The CT applicator brush sifts powder into small particles, resulting in proper distribution. Quantities can be adjusted by the speed of the brush rotation. This allows for even and accurate distribution of product. Application at the time of planting can be used with any seed delivery system and saves farmers time, labor, and money. Remember, CT applicators for the Changing Times.
I wish I could side dress more than just nitrogen.
You can. While side dressing is efficient for nitrogen applications, you can also use that opportunity to apply PK and the micronutrients your crop needs. AgroLiquid's Calibrate and MicroLink products allow you to nutritionally balance your side dress application efficiently and economically. Let Agriculture Liquid Fertilizer help you make your next crop a bumper crop. For more info, visit agroliquid.com.
Precision in grain moisture management can save you thousands in spoilage and elevator ducts. The AgriDry Bullseye Controller monitors temperature and grain moisture and is available for all dryer makes and models. Plus, our AD-Link feature gives you 24/7 remote monitoring and allows you to control your dryer wherever you are. Call us today for more information.
Dry Load Store, 1-855 AgriDry.
Take a look inside any rotary combine, and you'll find single rotor technology. Technology Case IH introduced over 35 years ago with the Axial Flow combine. But unless it gives you more bells and whistles with fewer belts and chains, more power using less fuel, it's not an Axial Flow. Because while the heart of every rotary combine beats red, only Case IH gives you the power to do more.
Welcome to the 30-second tour of your local Poet plant. Local producers sell us tons of their grain. We grind it, mix it with water and special enzymes. The result is fermented, distilled, and dehydrated until it's 200 proof alcohol. Corn oil is extracted, and protein and nutrients are condensed, dried, and turned into animal feed, bringing our tour to an end with high-protein feed and cleaner-burning high-octane fuel. Visit poet.com to learn more.
What if instead of running test plots on 10 acres, you could test on 10,000? With Farmers Business Network, the world becomes your plot trial. FBN is the independent farmer-to-farmer agronomic network. FBN connects real data from tens of thousands of fields and provides you trusted analysis on hundreds of seeds, practices, and field performance to maximize your profits. Find out how your field seeds and practices compare today by joining the FBN community at farmersbusinessnetwork.com. Just $500 per year for unlimited acres.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune into the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us each weekday on SiriusXM Channel 80 at 2 p.m. Central.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD television program, where we'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
American ethanol is made primarily from corn. Did you realize that the type of corn used for ethanol and livestock feed is much different than the sweet corn on your dinner table? For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.